Hey, it's Matthew David. There was a fish that just jumped there and a bird trying to get it instantly. It's a little misty out, so this is kind of exciting. You can't really see across, and it's getting to that time of year where I just want to be outside all the time. Finally. And so we are contemplating taking our ministry back to Florida. You know, our ministry is originally in Tampa, Florida, so we are looking at the prospect of doing that. And to me, that's pretty exciting because we've been here a couple years, and overall, it's been pretty good, especially during this trial of the confusion with external governance. You know, we've outpictured a world of tyranny, and to call it anything less than that is just to play mind games. So I'm just going to call it what it is. It's just the belief in tyranny. But in this place, and maybe it's because there's a lot of people praying here and whatever, I mean, I prayed over this city every single day during the lockdown, really, and walking the pier, kind of circling through. And I know I'm not the only one. You know, for the most part, things have been really smooth here. Not much problems. I've only had to really get into one altercation with, you know, not wanting to do this to my face. And that's no big deal. I just don't give them my money or my business anymore. And don't really care where they go from here. So now we're going back to Florida, most likely, and we'll probably establish our church there. And most likely, if things are going to get back to a more normal position, I feel like I'm ready to get, you know, an actual church set up that's not just doing it through workshops and doing it through the computer, because that's what we've done up until this point. We got established and we started doing workshops and we started doing live streams. You know, that's how we initially did this. And then I got our first building in Sheboygan here, and that was good, and we were preparing things. But what happened was then all of a sudden, you know, we were several months into that, and then all this stuff started happening, and nobody got together anymore. So we got rid of that place, and now it's just a matter of going where God wants us to be. But I do have this vision where people would be able to come, and it would be more like a healing room that John G. Lake Ministries did, because it was really efficient. You know, the whole gospel that was rediscovered in my studies, you know, Mary Baker Eddy was a real pioneer, and I do quote her a lot. I do lean on a lot of her work because it's really, really good in terms of discovering the scientific principle of healing that is forever permanently available to all of God's children. That principle is really clear and understandable in her teachings. And so, you know, I've studied that part of it. I've also gone into John G. Lake and Curry Blake and, you know, the healing room idea. And I really like the idea of some sort of convergence into both of those capacities, but not necessarily carrying it as a brand, because we don't have to try to reinvent the wheel. I just want to be able to deliver the effect. So in other words, having a space where people could come in, and there could be a reading room, you know, there could be some good reading material, and there could be also people that are on staff that are equipped and trained to be able to pray and to be able to apply the scientific principle of healing, you know, the long lost art of Christian healing, not the, you know, sensationalized dramatization where, you know, it's really a lot of theatrics and circus tricks. I'm talking about the the real subtlety of just getting into the allness of God and being able to help someone else get into the allness of God to be able to receive freedom from bondage. And so that's what's on my heart, is being able to take the ministry to the next level with the book Trust the Most Powerful Force in the Universe that just came out. And then with my most recent healing that I went through, it brought me closer to God, in fact, even again. And it also really reminded me that there really is nothing else worth pursuing. Everything else worth pursuing is an animal instinct. Okay, it's a lust of the flesh, because we know in God's word that if we pursue Him diligently, that all these things will be added. Seek first the kingdom and its righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. And I've demonstrated that. I spent a lot of time, as my daily ritual, my daily routine, really contemplating God and getting out in, places of peace like this and walking and taking that time that, the engineering of flow state means you have to be selfish enough to protect your time and your space, free from distraction, so that you can contemplate on an idea long enough to wear out your conscious mind and open up, the dimensions of both hemispheres and get into a flow state where you're 7 to 10 times more effective, quite literally. That's measured by science of today's standards. 7 to 10 times more efficient when you get into flow state. And so that has been a routine of mine for several years now, and it's really helped me break through on all levels. And most recently, what I'm, kind of most proud of is, the only part I'm proud of myself of is the obedience part, because that's my part of the deal, is that I became obedient to a principle of God. And I've seen harmony come back into my family, the relationship with Sabrina and the kids even. And that all came together, and it started working itself together during the time when it needed to the most. When the whole world got crazy, and there's so much stress on all of these, these little kids, because they're having to deal with this, worldwide madness. And, they're not able to see their friends, and they're going through all of these trials themselves. So one of the things that we got clear was we strengthened the bond of the family unit. And, that's not the true measure of success, because, Father, Mother, God is the only Father, Mother, and the kids know that. But the family unit is a real critical component of maintaining structure and routine, and also to give a sense of stability. And that's really important for children. And they're dealing with a lot of struggles right now, because if you don't think that it's traumatizing what they're having to go through, being treated like it's Munchausen by proxy. I mean, you would be, if what was committed on these children today was done by anybody other than massive globalist type of people, you understand, these people would have been locked up forever and thrown away the key for child abuse. But yet it's acceptable now, because it's being done on a international, global level by people who are seemingly above the law. And the reason why they are is because everybody worships their fiat money system. And so, again, I won't get into it on this transmission because it's not what it's about, but that's why in my book, in Trust, I mentioned, Max Kaiser quite a bit, and I talked about, Bitcoin, and I talked about, becoming sovereign with your own money, in essence, removing the third parties and standing up for that type of a cause, because there really is only one way out of this conundrum, and that's just to take all governance from out there and put it back Put it back on the living I am, the living Christ, the imagination, spirit, eternal, real. Put it back on God. God is all governance. Now, how did this happen? Well, you know that the external world is really like your external body. Okay? And I'll tell you this, I'll come back to the kids because I know I left that hanging. But your external world is kind of like your extended body. And so, if your extended body is sick with a nasty cancer because it's destroying all of life and goodness, you see what I'm saying? That's what the idea is that there is a power that can come against goodness and destroy it. And that's being projected outward. It's almost like the nation states have a collective cancer mindset, and they are projecting tyranny as governance. And there's no difference than being inside of this body and all of a sudden, projecting a pain that won't go away or some sort of restriction or imposition. There's an imposition on your free flow of well-being, right? That's what it means. There's an imposition upon what was given to you freely by your Creator. So what that is that's a severed connection, okay? Only in thought, because there is no true severed connection, but there's a severed connection in thought where man has forgotten who he is, where he comes from, and what his purpose is. And so therein lies where all these dreams of terror in the night come in. And because there are so many, if you look at it for what it is, there are so many of us that have prioritized everything else. Everything else is more important than God. You see, I'm even careful with that with things that I'm passionate about, like crypto and blockchain. I won't spend more time on that than I spend with God. I know some people that can't get away from watching that shit all day long, and they've made that their new idol. I don't think anything should be your idol at all, because what happens is, for the majority of people, fear is their idol, and they walk around in fear, terrified, watching the news. It's always it's always another attack, another event, another whatever, just to keep them all in that bondage of fear. And so what that does is it drowns out their power, because they've become disconnected. They're not focusing like the ray worshiping the sun. It says in the gospel to enter God's courts with praise. Now, if you understand what a court is a level playing field. And so if you enter God's courts, that's a symbolic meaning of being connected to God. It means being on the same level. All right? You have to be on the same level. And then that's a cryptic cipher right there. It's showing you that to get on the same level with God, you have to demonstrate praise in your heart, because out of the heart come the issues of life. And so praise is mostly attuned to the spiritual fruit of joy and gratitude. It's kind of like the convergence of joy, peace, and gratitude with love. It's like all of those combined. It takes a congregation of all of those fruits to combine into the outward demonstration of praise. Just walk around today and go into a place where people are demonstrating fear. They're wearing all the paraphernalia of fear, and maybe even the screen is on and you hear all of the Luciferian matrix programming. Fear, 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 be afraid, death is coming, death is coming, death is coming, war is here, poverty, 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 sickness, poverty, malice, aforethought. It's like all of that's just a broadcasting signal. What is the purpose of that? To keep you distracted, because the only attack the enemy has is to distract you, and for you to break your focus and to turn away from your own inheritance. You turn away from your inheritance, and the way back is through praise. And that's the congregation of peace, love, joy, and gratitude. All of those combined, all right? And even goodness and kindness. It's really the congregation of all the fruits, all right? And so what you do is you make a full swoop and say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just get right. And from that position, then what it says is that all of these blessings will come upon me. Now you walk in the midst of the valley of the shadow of death, but no evil shall come near thee, because you abide under the wings of the Most High, under the Almighty. That's what I mean. You get that, right? That's what you're doing. So what happens is you go back to the original teaching of the gospel of truth, and they say how do not be tempted when the outer becomes hostile. Because when truth comes into your heart, the outer becomes hostile because it knows its days are numbered. Because the jig is up, because you're ascending out of the matrix. Now, the way out of it is not to push against it, it's not to fight it, it's not to go to war against it, it's not your battle, it's God's battle. Your job is to get on a level court with God, to become righteous, which means to become unified as the reflection of God. In other words, you're reflecting what God is doing. You want to reflect what God is doing. And all of those fruits are what God is doing. So what is the easiest way for you to do that? It's to demonstrate praise. Praise, 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 praise. Praise you, God. That's why some of the smartest ministers in the world, they teach this, but very few people get it. Very few people see it for what it is. You know, I heard one time when Jesse Duplantis was talking about how he had an attack, right? Something came against him, and he said, "Oh, praise you, God. That means I'm about to get a double blessing." You see that? That's what you call mastery. That's what you call having been with God so many years that you understand that relationship from experience. Okay? It's not in your head anymore, it's in your heart. You see, I've heard Kenneth Copeland do the same thing, and now consequently, those are very wealthy, very, very wealthy people, and I'm not just talking monetarily. They enjoy really good health, and they have peace, okay? Now, you can make your own argument what you think about that, but I've witnessed it myself, and I want to tell you that I had this massive transformation as I was working through this latest healing, right? Okay, so as you know, the mesmerism came. I talked about all that stuff. I don't want to retrace all that, and I want to give voice to it. But what happened was, to make a long story short, was that when the symptoms came to their final head, it got really intense, right? It got to the point where I had to make a line in the sand. I'm either going to fear or I'm going to hold my position, all right? Now, I'm going to give you a little secret. There's something I discovered years ago, and I broke the back of lack off of my life by taking this human action of praise. And I did it with my finances. And I also did it when I was coming out of Lyme disease. It was the same thing. And here's what I did. I said it and I meant what I said. I said, if I go down, God, I'm going down believing in you. And what I meant was that I'm taking a position. I'm going to root myself into that position. I'm going to hold steadfast to it. And I'm not going to have weak hands. I'm not going to get shaken out. You know what I'm saying? When there's a massive outward appearing obstacle or some sort of disturbance that comes, it's not going to shake me out. That's how you please God, because what you are asserting by doing that is that you're demonstrating the miracle that Job did. And yet I will praise him. Do you see that? That is the scientific behavior that breaks the spine of the troubled dream that you apparently have going on around you, whether it's relationships, health, finances, whatever it is. All right? So financially speaking, here's the example. You know, I started tithing when I was very, very broke, and I was coming out of Lyme disease from that whole dream. And I just said, you know what, God, this is a principle. In other words, I'm going to reflect on something you said in Malachi 3:10. If I bring you the tithe into the storehouse, you shall open up the windows of heaven and pour me out a blessing, so much so that I don't have enough room to receive it. And so what I did was that no matter what was going on around me, I took that tithe, and most times I increased it, okay, because I was really showing God that I don't believe in things of this world. I believe in God, period. Now, again, the gospel of truth, Nag Hammadi Library says the outer is a dead carcass. You're being tricked by it. Don't take it seriously. It's an empty, dead carcass, right? And so what I'm going to do in the midst, and now it's funny, we have a mist out here, right? I can't see where that sidewalk is up there, okay, because I'm walking through a mist, all right? Now, the only way that I know it's there is because I have faith it's going to be there when I get there. It could be flooded out right now. I just walked through a puddle there and it was coming up to the top of my tennis shoes, right? It could be flooded out. The only way I'm going to know it's there is because I have faith. If I keep going in that direction, it's going to be there. Now, consequently, I also have faith that I'm not going to go in that direction because there's a very high degree of probability that God's saying go this way instead. Now, you see what I just did? I didn't use my own human will. I relied on God's will. Now, that's another caveat. You see that? See, that's where some people get crossed up in their faith. They say, okay, I have done something in faith, believing God. You know, I sowed a seed and I said, God, this seed's going to give me my $1 million and I'm believing you for it, right? And then all of a sudden, it didn't show up. And then, you know what you're going to do? Then you're going to doubt God. You're going to say, you know what? I've done this game before. You know, I planted these seeds. I said, God, you're going to prosper me. You're going to give me my $1 million. But you didn't give it to me. And it's been 2 years now, and I'm just not going to deal with this anymore. I can understand how a person defaults to that. But here's the big idea. The reason why I didn't walk through that, even though I had faith the sidewalk would be there, okay, and the sidewalk would have been there, because I trusted God that I was going to have a firm footing when I got there. However, the reason why I didn't do that is because the minute I stepped into that wet puddle, some part of me no longer felt peace inside. I lost a sense of peace about pursuing in that direction. So I was very tuned into my heart space. And so now what am I saying and why should you care about what I just said? Well, what I'm telling you is that if you start to lose a sense of carefreeness, okay, in other words, if your hand is no longer open, but you're grasping at life, you're grasping. Human will is grasping. When you try to grab water, it scatters, okay? Put your hand under in a bucket of water and grab it, it scatters. But if you put your hand under a bucket of water and just bring it up like this, you can hold and fill your cup. That is where people break the continuity, because what they do is they believe that they have this principle thing figured out. They're like, in other words, I have discovered a principle, now I'm going to go out and make it happen. Now, this might be helping you because you might be crossed up in thinking that you of yourself are going to make something happen because you discovered something about God. And I want to tell you that that's the last remaining piece that has to go. You of yourself are going to do absolutely nothing because you have discovered something about God. When you understand what I just said, and I'll repeat it, you of yourself are going to do nothing because you have discovered a principle of God. That is when you truly understand the principle. That's when you truly understand the principle. So, here's how it worked in my finances when I truly understood the principle. Now, I didn't say, here's my $20. I know I'm going to get $200 back. I just know I'm going to get $200 back. And then I start looking for that $200 and I start wondering why it didn't show up. You see, that is not how it works. Because what that implies is that you never let go. You never let go of that $20. Think about it. No, you didn't let that go because you put your strings attached on it. And how does it feel to you when somebody gives you something with strings attached? Let's say, your friend from 10 years ago comes along and they say, hey buddy, remember that thing I gave you? Back when we used to hang out? Sure would be nice if you would pay me back. And they looked at you like that with some sort of, whoa. You'd be like, wait a minute, buddy, wait a minute. You just made me feel dirty. Sure would be nice if you paid me back. I thought you gave that to me. I thought that was for me. how would you feel in that position? Well, you'd feel the same way that most likely, it feels to our Creator when we do the same thing to Him. Father, Mother, God. Okay, I say Him because I'm personifying, so you get it, right? But it's a principal idea. So what it is when you think you know the path and the steps that are laid out before you, and you think you're steering the ship, okay, then you're going to run into frustration, and you're going to first notice that your sense of peace is going to diminish. That's going to be your first clue. When your sense of peace is diminishing, in other words, I planted that seed 2 weeks ago. I told God, here's your seed. I know you're going to pay the rent this month. And you know what? I don't see it showing up. Right? So what are you going to do? Well, your peace is already broken because you've already started to doubt. See, and once you've already started to doubt, it means that you never understood the principle in the first place. Now, I keep using that word principle wisely because I'm telling you that the principle is the thing. You're the partaker of it. It's like the music plays you in life. You don't play the music. That's what I'm talking about. When the music plays you as a musician, isn't that when the best things come out? That's what they call flow state, by the way. Flow state is when life spontaneously plays harmony through you, and you're not tripping it up with interference and being off timing, and you're confused and all that stuff. So what you want to do, and you've noticed this when I do my transmissions, is when I get out and I walk and I talk, it takes me a while, maybe sometimes 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't know, I don't know when it's going to hit. But what I do is I cut out all distraction, and I come and I focus on what I'm doing, and all of a sudden flow state comes upon me. And I'm in the flow state now, and I can tell when I'm in the flow state because I lose track of all sense of time and space, and I'm in the allness of God. In the allness of God. I'm rooted in the allness of God. In other words, I'm letting a principle communicate, behave, demonstrate. I'm letting the principle live because in Him I live, move, and have my being. In Him. He's not in me. You've made yourself a God if you think God's in you. People that say, well, God's in you. No, you've made yourself a God now. Now, you're the possessor of God. In other words, I can turn God on when I want to. I can lay my faith upon people. And wow, there's God. I turned Him on. I did that. And then when I don't turn Him on, then all of a sudden I have the choice. I can go out and I can do bad things Monday through Friday. And I can come back to church on Sunday. I can turn God back on and get my instant repentance. Do you see how humans think? Unfortunately, that doesn't work. And then they get let down when they try to tithe, and they say, oh, it doesn't work. That preacher's just getting rich off me, man. That Copeland guy's got $1 billion ministry. Why the heck would I give him $100? Why the heck couldn't I give Matthew David's ministry any money when I'm the one paying the rent over here? God needs to give me the money. See, those people that talk like that, they don't understand what principle means. Principle means that you are a partaker of a eternal phenomenon that is changeless. It's also blameless. It's also harmonious. So it's for your good. The law is good. The law is love, and it's always blessing you. Always, always blessing you. And if you're not receiving that blessing, well, what that means is the first tell is you're not praising. Because if you're not praising, you better walk back to where you took a wrong turn and correct yourself and stop and correct in that moment. Here's an example of what I mean. Let's say you planted a seed, right? And you said, okay, I'm going to get it right this time, God. I'm not going to tithe with strings attached. It's not about me, it's about you. It's not about me, it's about you. Less of me, more of you means I prosper because you have all things, and if I can just get me out of the way, then I'll demonstrate you everywhere I go, and then I'll have all the things that you've given me. Keyword, already given you. You're not going to get anything. You're going to receive what's already been given. That's when you understand what principle means. When you understand what I just said, that's when you understand what principle means. You're not going to get anything. You're going to receive what's already been given to you. How does that happen? Well, it happens when you're not there anymore. In other words, I don't go to God with all the cares and concerns of this world and try to argue as if God doesn't know. You know, sure would be nice if God knew I needed that rent payment this week. You know what? I think I better tell him again. You know what? I don't really trust God anymore because I tithe, and God damn it, I gave him till Thursday, and he didn't bring it in. I mean, seriously, God, if you can't do it for me, then I guess I'm screwed. Okay, now that right there is where you stopped and you took a wrong direction in the road. All right? You ain't going to get there from there. God has got grace and mercy for infinite ad infinitum. So you can do that all day long. God will just wait around loving you still. Like, okay, well, sure would be nice if you would just reflect me instead and just let me order your steps, because really, I live and you don't. Understand that? No, you don't understand that. Because if you did understand that, then we wouldn't have this conversation. So what really is important is you go back and you see it for what it is. Oh, I'm relying on what I hear, smell, see, taste, and touch. Duh! I've been beguiled in the middle place by the external kingdom, the hologram. It's deceiving me. It's mesmerism at every turn. It's animal magnetism. It's the lusts of the flesh. And it's always in discord because it's always at war with the truth. Oh, I did it again, Lord. Okay, here's what I'm going to do now. I better just think about some things I'm super grateful for. All right. Well, God, I remember a time when I was bedridden for nearly 2 years. Holy man, am I rich right now. Do you know how rich I am? Like, some people don't understand. They don't understand how... Here's a perfect example. I know somebody who like ignores my counsel at every time he comes for counsel because he thinks he's better than me, because he spends all his money on things to make him look better than me, right? And that's the position that he wants to be in. But he comes when he's got this problem, and then I always have the right answer, but he doesn't ever do it because he's got to prove that he's right. But here's the idea: is the reason why he doesn't listen to my counsel is because I don't man up, and I don't pony up 3 houses for millions of dollars, and I don't show up in a Lambo, and I don't do all these things, and I don't associate with the with the high rollers at the club and this and that and all the things that the world see. Unfortunately, when you go down that path, as I'm watching demonstrate in his life, is it leads you to the path of arrogance and pride. And then the fall comes. How do I know? Because I've already done that. So what happens is when you think that you're so great because you've been parlaying yourself into those avenues and patting yourself on the back, you forgot God. You have forgotten. And the reason why you've forgotten is because the purpose of your memory, okay, is to recall only the good things in life, only the good. Now, if you were to do that, you would have a perpetual heart of praise. And if you were to live in a perpetual heart of praise, then you wouldn't have to spend one moment trying to fit into this world to any degree whatsoever, other than whatever brought you joy. And you see, I know that this guy doesn't have joy because he keeps putting himself in positions where he doesn't have joy. And yet, you would say he's achieved money goals that people would dream of, with tens and tens of millions of dollars, right? But you'd think that this person would have joy. But that's not what I hear every time I talk to him. And so what I've said is, hey, you'd think by now you'd be living your perfect day. Maybe you get up in the morning, you go work out, hang out with your kids, you go for a walk, you go do whatever you want, make love to your wife, do whatever you want, right? But you're not doing that. Because you have something to prove still. And because you have something to prove still, it means that you're not, reflecting God. And what happens is the more you invest into that position, the more you invest into that, see, the problem is that it can lead you to what I call richcraft. Now, that's what the wealthiest people on the planet are playing on their people right now, is they're playing richcraft. In other words, since they've gone so far in that direction and they've gotten so far away from what it means to praise God, right? Because they're not doing that. What they're doing is they're getting an erection over imposing pain upon others, and they are aroused by satanic impulses because they have bought and consumed every single lust of this world, without any restraint. They probably, the lust is insatiable. For people that have an eating problem, they will eat till there's no end in sight. People that have a sex problem, they will have sex until it kills them. And then there's drugs, and then there's violence. There's all sorts of lusts, right? And see, the erring ways of this world will ensnare you into believing that you of your will are on the right track the further you go down those roads. But the cue to stop and correct is, where did you lose the peace in your heart? Go back to that juncture. That's where you correct your thought. And consequently, you'll correct your behavior from that place too. And then when your behavior becomes praise, well, then you can have all those things if you would need them. But you see, you never lose sight. You never lose sight of what is real and what is factual. And that fact is that God is love, God is life, God is all in all. And to divulge yourself and divest yourself into all these activities, and to become a workaholic, and to become a foodaholic, and to become even a workoutaholic like I used to be. I used to work out 5+ hours a day. Everybody's got some temptation that they will get lured into, and every one of those temptations, what they do is at first they reward you because you get social status, or you get something of this world that gives you a sense of importance. Now look at the word importance. It means means no port to stand on. Get this, understand what you're doing. Self-importance means self means self, no port to stand on. It's showing you in plain sight through the grammar that you have nothing to stand on. Now, I did this with bodybuilding years ago, the perfect example. And I want to show you how I found harmony. So when I was 19, I was the type of guy that I never allowed mistakes. I was a perfectionist to the nth degree, which means that I was mentally ill. All right, people who are perfectionists are mentally ill because they don't understand the ways of God, or not man's ways. So I went 8 months without a cheat day, without even having a cheat drop, without even having an extra calorie that wasn't on my list, because I wanted to win this bodybuilding show, right? And of course I looked really great for a while, but there was a time, I would think about 1 month before the show, and instead of realizing that I timed it wrong and that was the end of my will, I should have just stopped and just allowed life to just rebalance. I mentally just pushed through that wall, and I said, no. But I lost all sense of peace. I wasn't sleeping anymore at night. I had no more peace. I hated what I was doing. So why did I want to do it? Because I wanted to be better than other people. Why? Because I wanted love. Why? Because I had lost a relationship with someone I was with for 6 years, and we had a daughter, and that was all taken away from me. And so my heart was broken. Okay? And so here's what I'm trying to tell you, is that when the broken heart happens, the spirit of fear comes in. That's where fear enters your life. So think about it like this. If you're struggling with a problem right now, some sort of illness or financial lack or relationship issues, you didn't get there without fearing something, because fear is the first step to sin. Fear, confusion, lack of trust, division, and double-mindedness. Okay? That's how it happens. So you have to look back if you want to gain crystal clarity and say, where did my broken heart take place? Because that's where the spirit of fear entered your life. So as an example, back to the story, the spirit of fear came into my life at that point because that's when I really lost a serious foundation, because I believed that, well, I didn't have any value unless I had love from this girl. You know, I really made her an idol in my life because I was really spiritually immature back then. I didn't have any footing, any understanding of the real God. Okay, I was still believing in the external God that was separate, you know, the God out there, that whole nonsense. So of course I didn't believe in that, because there's nothing to believe in, because that's not where God is. That's the satanic trickery. So what happened was my world got really dark. But what happened was I didn't have the wisdom to see that when the broken heart took place, I overcompensated in that moment. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to be better than everybody so I can get love in this world. And here's how I can do it. I can go work out and I can get really, really, you know, tight and toned and just have the perfect body, and then I'll get love. Now, that's no different than a person who tries to negotiate a tithe with God and say, okay, I'm going to put this money down and you're going to pay my rent, God. You see, what I'm telling you is it's the same mindset. You're not dealing with a level playing field, okay? And the reason why is you come into God's court with praise. Court means level playing field, like a tennis court. Level playing field. We're on the same playing field. We're equal. Remember that iniquity, okay, we get punished for our iniquity. Iniquity means you're not equal anymore. You're not on a level playing field. So, no, it's for YouTube. What's that? Yeah, you want to be in there? Keep it children friendly though.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
What's up, guys?
So what's your name?
I'm Justin.
Justin?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
I like them guys.
Yeah, thanks. Are you from Sheboygan?
From Sheboygan, born and raised.
Awesome. Do you like it?
Yeah, love it here.
Awesome.
Sometimes. Everybody knows when you sneeze, though. Like,
Yeah.
Word travels crazy.
It's not that big. It's, you
It's
know.
small.
Yeah.
It looks big, but it's small.
Yeah. Well, I've met a lot of good people. We're originally from Madison,
Huh?
and then Spring Green, then we got here a couple years ago.
Are you guys like
Nice.
recording the best thing in Sheboygan?
Yeah. Well, we couldn't do it without you.
I know. Well,
How are you?
Obviously, I'm the bar owner. Are you
Yeah.
coming for fish?
Huh?
Coming for fish?
Well, maybe, but not right now.
Where you headed?
I'm just doing by the lake. I'm just doing a YouTube. This is going to go on YouTube later.
What's
So
your channel?
it's Matthew David Hurtado.
What are you gonna YouTube?
Well, I'm actually a minister, so I put up spiritual videos. So yeah.
Nice.
So I catch the beauty of all this, and then I just
Are you recording right now?
Yeah.
it's
we're live.
pre-recording.
So don't swear.
Yeah, I said keep it kid friendly. He said he would. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll come in for fish later maybe.
All right. Take care.
Okay. All right. Have a good day. Yep. All right. So you know what was cool about that is that I was just starting to talk about praising God, and then all of a sudden, you know, I'm greeted by warm, loving people. And that's pretty cool. Now, let's look at it like this, because I want to show you the truth about that. The same people, I'm talking the exact same people. For instance, my grandma, my mom, people that were not, they were seemingly not warm and loving to me, get this, when I had decided, because of my broken heart, I decided I was going to take the reins myself and I was going to prove to the world how great I was, right? Well, those same people whom I had animosity towards because they didn't want me dieting, they didn't want me doing all this bodybuilding stuff because they could see towards the end that I was becoming irritable and I was really losing my joy in life, and they could see the scowl on my face, and they could see how I was losing my sense of peace in this world. So they were against it. So they were pushing against it. All right? There was a lot of resistance. So anyway, I went through 5.5 years of this eating disorder thing. After that, I broke down, and see, all of that led to disaster. So what I'm telling you is that when human will comes in the picture, it is stemming from a lack of trust, lack of confidence, which means we've already gone through fear and confusion. And it also implies that you're operating out of a broken place because of your intervention. You're intervening in a divine principles universe. God called it perfect. He called it good. All that was created, and you exist in the all that was created. But yet you came into expression, came into being in a position, get this, that is not relative. It's not on the same court. You're at another plane. You're at a lower plane. Like David Hawkins talks about the consciousness scale. You're at a much lower plane. You're not on the same court as God. You're down here. You're in lack, strife, want, envy, jealousy, rage, fear, hopelessness. See? So what happens then is the characters that are there, because there's only one. There's only one mind, one power, one life. What I'm telling you is the characters that are there are being pressed out from your own heart. Okay? And so those characters are demonstrating to you where you're at. That's where you're at. So, when I finally started pursuing God, I broke free within a 24-hour period of that after 5.5 years, and I was set free. God set me free. How did it happen? I got into the allness of God. That's how all healing takes place, is you get on the same level as God, you get on the same court, and you praise, and you contemplate you as the reflected idea of God, that you are partaking in God's perfect harmony, in God's life. You're not sustaining your own life. You're not responsible for that. So when you get on the same level, okay, and you get there by praise, and that's how I got there. I was really in a position where I started praising God. I didn't think about my problem all day long and try to solve it, because that's putting yourself on a lower level. I got up to the level of peace, love, and joy, and I started praising, so I was on the same level as God. Now what happens is that everything that existed on this level is no longer vibrationally a match on this level, so it faded out of my life. And the people on this level, the people started reflecting back to me, my mom, love, and all the things that I ever wanted. They started reflecting back to me. In fact, lo and behold, I got to that place before my grandmother passed. And this is an amazing story, because I am so glad we did this. Because the day that she was passing on, the family had come together in the house. Uncle Jeff was there, and my Uncle Brad and Greg, and everybody was there. Like, all of her kids were there. And, they raised me too, so I was there. And, I was contemplating, I had gotten free by this point, and I was contemplating, gosh, all that stuff that happened between Grandma and I really, that wasn't right, I'm sorry that happened. And so I looked at her in her eyes, okay, and she was struggling at this time, like her life was passing. And I said, Grandma, I said, I love you. And then she looked, she opened her eyes and she looked at me and she says, I love you too. And then she closed her eyes and she took her breath and she was gone. That was the final. And I had made amends in that moment. I had made amends. I'm here to tell you that set me free. That set me free in that moment. And God, knowing all things, containing all within himself, and me here as the reflection of God in this spiritual school, learning how to know, love, and trust God, because that's what we're here for. Because I had gotten to the plane, and because I had been doing what I'm telling you, and because I was operating in that capacity, God allowed me the experience that set me free in his ways, not my ways. And so let's just sum this up real quick. So what I'm saying to you and what I'm suggesting is, let me clean it up with the tithe thing. Like, this is how I tithe. I just look at what's come in and I say, I have a principle here. You said 10%, God. It's a minimum 10%, right? That's your money because it belongs to you. So here's what I do. I just gather it up. I say, I love you, God. It's yours. Thank you. Thank you for everything you've given me. I don't know what you want to bless me with. I know I have ideas and I look at my goal sheets every day, but I'm unattached. I look at it and it gives me direction. But I am not going to go in that direction any further than where the peace of my heart allows me to, because the direction could change at any moment, just like I showed you in the field back there. See, you have to understand that. It's not your will, but his will that you want. Because I got what I wanted with bodybuilding. I got what I wanted. I took third place in the NPC Collegiate Team Universe or whatever, which is pretty cool, and I looked great, and all this stuff. And it was my first show, and the guys that beat me were they were using drugs. And I had not even understood, because it was my first show, that people even cheated to do that. I found out afterwards, because everybody went out to get drunk and party and all this, and try to eat some food after you starved yourself for 6 months or whatever. And they were all, like, yeah, I've been using this and this and this. And I'm thinking, oh man, I got beat by 2 guys that were using drugs, and I probably would have beat them. But here's the deal. When my peace left, long before that show, I should have let it go. Because I had already achieved everything God wanted me to have out of that experience. See, and the only good is the good which God bestows. So if God didn't bestow this good on you, but yet you went out and pursued it, it's not the good. It becomes, when you squeeze water, it scatters. What happens is you squeeze it out into some other unintended consequence of your life. You disrupt the natural flow of life. And so, now let's go into some healing stuff. I'll talk about some healing stuff. I've got some time here. I'm just getting my walk in and I figured I might as well just flow. So it's the year 2007 and Sabrina and I are, we're married, and George is on the way. And all of a sudden, I started having all these issues, and things are just really getting weird, and losing the sense of harmony and peace. Hello. And to make a long story short, I ended up, with the Lyme disease and the bedridden, and it was so traumatic that I hardly even like going. It's almost like I put that in a black box and I fired that thing out the window and left it forever gone. But if I have to, I can resurrect that memory, that memorial service, right? That's where the dead are. They're in the memorial service. That's what you're doing when you pull up memories like that, is you're resurrecting the dead. But don't bring them back to life, because they had no life if they didn't serve you. If it wasn't good, it wasn't God. So that's my rule. So when I look at it, I say, okay, here's what happened. I had lost my peace a long time coming. I had this job. There was a job that was really it was really not serving me anymore. And it was a very manipulative experience. And I didn't let it go. And the reason why is because I was afraid. So I held on to something out of fear. And I kept pursuing in this state of perpetual mental duress and conflict. And if you do that long enough, sometimes the great liberator is the deathly disease that'll get you out of your circumstances. So if you can find no other way out, sometimes you find your way out through death. And so what happened was I started contemplating. First it started with all these weird symptoms, and then I became obsessed with symptoms. And I started to look for solutions to symptoms. And there was no joy in that. It was actually a downward spiral that was spiraling down fast as a plane falling out of the sky with no more engine, and it loses speed. And that's where my life was going. It was a rocket ship down to the earth to crash. And I was not helping the situation by thinking about fear all day, every day. And so I got to the point where I understood the scientific principle of life reflecting life, and life maintaining the continuity of life, and God filling all space, and that no space was left without His love, His protective guidance, His care. And then I really started to realize it wasn't my life, it was God's life. And I started to align myself on a plane to the point where I could start praising God again. And then I did something bold and fearless, and this is what destroyed the illness, is when I decided to get up out of my sickbed and to trust God with my life, knowing that God's intelligence would never let me fail if I would subdue fear at every turn, and instead of turning to a solution to the fear, which means a human solution, I would just turn to God's love and reflect on something God said was true, knowing the scientific principle. And that's what Mary Baker Eddy taught with Christian Science. And that's why I give a lot of credit to her, because it worked. And it didn't happen overnight. And I didn't give up. I had to fight that battle to reach perfection for 6 years. And some people might say, well, so much for an instant healing. Yeah, well, what's the alternative, right? I could have been sitting like I was for the rest of my existence, because it was pretty bad. But I'll tell you what happened, and the reason why it took 6 years, because I hadn't fully subdued fear yet. I was still hanging on to my life. I didn't lose my life to gain my life. I was still hanging on to the idea that I had a physical life. And it wasn't until I let go of that idea altogether and recognized that I am merely partaking in the body of Christ, or the substance of spirit, the imagination that is all, image and likeness of God. And that was what my real life was. And it contained all good in it. And so this fear that I was going to lose something in this had to all go. And once it did, then I received the divine principle, and all the symptoms just faded away. Because I was free from identifying as a mortal flesh, skin and bone being. And that's what I was telling you with my friend, right? When I was saying, he has to try to show the world how great he is, because he has this and this and this and this, and you can hear it in his language, because he's always trying to one up everybody with his language, how he's better than them. And it's really sad, because I know where that leads. And I actually had to cut him out of my life, unfortunately, because it got to the point where, we were supposed to go on these family dinners, like repeated over several years. We were supposed to get together so many times, and then at the last minute he'd always come up with an excuse. Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to go do this time. We had plans, and it got to the point where I recognized that, oh yeah, it's because your other circle of influence, you can't be seen with me and my family. And the irony of it is that he doesn't have anything more than I have in any realm, but he thinks he does. And that's really a mental illness. When you start to scale up and estimate what you see in front of you based on a false appearance. And so it really got to the point where I was sad about it. And Sabrina was sad about it, because we'd always go that way and we'd always make the time whenever we were just delighted, but it would never reciprocate. It was never an honored agreement, like, hey, we're going to get together. Oh no, sorry, something else came up. And that happened so many times over so many years. And then I thought, well, you just have a small dose of witchcraft. You just caught yourself a small dose of witchcraft. I mean, relatively speaking, tens of millions of dollars is not that great, and it's not going to get you anywhere near being ultra rich in this world. So if your goal is to be big boy pants and I got more money than everybody else, you're not even in the game. Because unless you got $1 trillion or more, I'm serious, the people running this thing are in the trillions and hundreds of trillions and quadrillions, in fact. So you're never going to get there, is what I'm telling you. You will never, ever, 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 even if you're a billionaire, multi-billionaire, I'm sorry you didn't make the cut. Because that world is not designed for those who walk in Christ, and that is not your true domain. That is a place of wickedness. That is a place of what they call witchcraft. That is a satanic pulpit, because it's idolatry of pagan sorcery and all of the things of this world. And the things of this world know nothing of Christ. It doesn't mean you don't get to use those things, because you see, they're all supplied to you when you walk in wisdom. And that's what this guy doesn't understand, is that if he has to write a check today, I can write the same check today. But he thinks that because I don't show up, that I'm not worthy to enter his domain. And that's really sad. And there are people out there that will get what they want, and they will become haughty and proud, and they will assume that they did something. And that is poison, because the minute you start thinking you did something, you've already lost track, and I can guarantee you, you won't have peace in your heart for too long. Because there really is a principle of humility that you must occupy. Okay? You must occupy the reflection of humility to receive divine grace. So if you're looking for a healing, occupy humility. How? Well, the same way that I did it when I would go to the gym and I was still trying to recover from the belief that I had Lyme disease. And sometimes I'd push too hard because I wanted to express freedom, and I wanted to just be free in the body of Christ, harmony and freedom. And then the belief would come, oh, you did too much. And the body would go into a lot of pain. Like the belief of pain would come hard and heavy as a mesmeric spell. My five senses would tell me, oh crap, we are in trouble now. Because I would reflect on over 36 ER visits trying to do the same thing, where I would seemingly go into shock, and I would they'd take hours for them to help me stabilize, okay? And this would happen again and again and again and again and again. Now, it wasn't that I was trying to be a bodybuilder at this time, but what I was doing was I was trying to express my ability to move freely within my own life that God gave me. I'm living in God, and the principle of freedom is an inherent quality at every point in the universe, and I was demonstrating that freedom. And so when the belief of sickness would come, I would have to stand my position and stand my ground in humility and say, I was never born. I never occupied flesh. God's life is the only life. And then I would have to really lay down every concept and every idea of what I think I was going to lose if I were to die. And recognize that none of it is real. I don't own any of it. And then when I got to do that, okay, I realized that God would be left standing, right? Well, if that were true, hey, then so would I. And then I had this supernatural realization of that. It wasn't a head game. I witnessed it because I kept myself firmly rooted in that idea. So I got rooted in the idea, okay, if this is the end, my mind would say, you're never going to see Sabrina again. You're not going to see your kids ever again. They're going to cry. They're going to miss you. And you're never going to be able to achieve any of your wildest dreams, etc. It's over. And then I would say, no, that is a lie. Do you understand how much humility it takes to do that? I'd say, no, that is a lie, because I was never born in this dream. God is the only life. God's harmonic principle of freedom to express joy, peace, love, kindness was never changed by any material condition, and it will never be changed. God gave me life and nothing can take it away, and God never takes away anything He bestows as goodness. And so Sabrina was nothing but an idea of love in my life and companionship. My children were the idea of, offspring, right? Well, I'm the idea of offspring of God. Do you think God's children die? No, they don't. And you see, I started to just hold my ground. And the biggest thing I had to do, the hardest part, is to subdue fear, human fear. But see, human fear is all about hanging on to worldly possessions, including your physical body. But the minute you let that all go, like just holding water, not grasping, the minute you let it all go, you contain it all. And see, that is the hardest thing that you're ever going to have to do when it implies healing. Is there was times when I'd go to the gym and I'd say, okay, my mind would jump in and say, boom, remember the last 3 dozen times you ended up in the ER? Like, my mom would say, go ahead, tempt me, do it again. Do it again, I'm going to put you back in that. I'm telling you, you ain't going to get out of this. My mind would come as the accuser, right? Satan the accuser, human mind, would come against me because it believed that I had a meat sack. It believed all these things. Say, you ain't never going to see Sabrina again. You do this too much, you're going to die right here. Well, fast forward. I had to go through all that same crap this last spell, after I went into the doctor and they said, this isn't, whatever. They said all this crap and they had their little evidence to prove it and this and that. And I had to go through all the same thing, and I had to say, okay, here it comes. What is the fear here? That I'll never see Sabrina again. I'll never see the kids again. Everything I've worked for, the ministry, everything I'm dreaming about is all going to go away. And I say, well, hell, let it all go away, because I'm one with God. Do whatever you want. I'm not afraid. I am not afraid. So I went out and I worked out anyway, and I ran anyway. And I said, God was never affected. God has never been defeated. God is not scared. God is not broken. I never broke a moral law. See, the only thing you should ever worry about is to break a commandment, and the only commandment is to love God and to love others. Okay, that's it. It's just to love. That's it. The only commandment is to love. Whoever has an unself love receives immediately divine grace. Whoever has, which means that you exude unself love, okay? Unself means you aren't there. It doesn't mean you're a martyr. It doesn't mean you go out and pick up trash all day for your neighbors. That's not what unself love is. Unself love means that you realize with real spiritual eyes that you aren't there. It's God and God alone. There is no human life. There's only God. And you exist as the image and likeness, which means God is imagining you into being. You don't have an imagination. God is imagining you, and when you reflect and you use your faith to bridge the gap to the spiritual truth that whatever God is doing is all you can be doing. There's no cause for any sickness because God never created it. And there will be no harm that comes to you because God's not injured. It doesn't mean you go and tempt him and try to jump off a 10-story building, because again, the peace in your heart's going to break about 3 seconds before you do that, and that's your cue that you went the wrong direction. That means your human will tried to step on God and say, I'm smarter than you, I'm going to teach you something, God. I'm sorry, but your peace is your compass, okay? Joy is your compass to your destiny, and peace is the compass that you're in the steps of God. Prove me wrong. Go up to the top of a 10-story building. Actually, don't do it, but do something that's going to threaten your life, and if your peace breaks, don't do it. I will tell you this. If I would have lost my peace when I went out to work out because I was still afraid of what the doctor said, I would not have done it. Because I am not going to occupy, a state of being outside of God's covenant with me and try to prove something. But because I had peace, because first I mentally let go of all my attachments. And that's why I don't weight myself down with too much stuff, because I'm not attached. And that's how I more easily receive divine grace. Because I thought, okay, well shit, if I lost it all, I guess I gain it all. And I had a better perspective. And so what I'm telling you, hopefully it makes sense to you, because that's what I did. Is I came to the realization, I said, okay, if I go to this hill, because I love doing this and it brings me joy, because 75% of the time when I'm running, that's when I'm praying to God. I meditate while I run. I'm like meditating while I run. I'm focusing on, scriptures and on things that I lean on while I run. And I find so much peace and joy in it that I thought, well, I guess if I die, I guess I do. I don't care. I just don't really care, because I'm not going to die, because God didn't die. And I'm focused on God. I know that I'm reflecting God. I didn't break a moral law. See, the only thing I ever came back to was, did I break a moral law? And the answer was no. And so, as long as I knew I didn't defile myself from within by not loving God or not loving in general, I had nothing to worry about. Right? So I proceeded. And then when the temptation came, I had my big blowout when the symptoms reached an all-time peak. And I will tell you that subduing fear in that moment got a little more challenging. And I said, no. I said, every space in existence is God, and it's filled with only goodness and love for its child, its children. That's me. I am sustained because of God's life. I don't have a life. And since I've never been material, I've never broken a material law. So therefore, there's nothing to fear. Now, how did I learn that? Well, I learned it from watching Lona Ingwerson, when she's one of my spiritual mentors. And, she was the Christian Science lady that got bit by a deadly scorpion bite after she was teaching to a class of students. She woke up in the middle of the night and she said, oh my gosh, I had this dream that a fishhook went through her head. And then she realized it wasn't a dream, because her head was all swollen and it was really painful. And make a long story short, she wants to get out, to get on the flight, to go home. And she gets there and they find out that, you want to know what happened to you? And she's like, well, yeah. They're like, you were bit by one of our scorpions. It's fatal. And they're telling you, you're not going to be able to breathe. You're going to die. And we can't afford a collision, so we got to get you off this plane. And so they're telling her she's going to die. So she's got everybody there, fearful as can be, telling her she's going to die because it's a fatal scorpion bite and she's not going to be able to breathe. How would you like to be told that? Well, that was the same temptation that I would say I felt when the symptoms got really aggressive. And I said, what did Lona do? And she said this. She took as her medicine And this is where the sword of the Spirit comes in. The idea that a spiritual idea does not have a single element of error. She learned that from Mary Baker Eddy. And this understanding, right, this spiritual understanding, removes properly anything that is offensive. So I held on that and I said, well, that's all I got. That's all I need, because that's putting all the burden back on God. And I did exactly what she did. And, well, I guess I'm still here. So, you know, God gave me another day. What can I say? Thank you, God. Praise you, God. Again, let's go back to praising God. And you should praise God every day, because you don't know when your dream will end. But it doesn't mean you end. It just means the dream ends. This dream. So, I'm here dreaming again with you still. And it's been a good walk, but that's how I received the divine healing principle. So, you know, what happened with Lona was that our head went back to normal, and the next day she was completely healed. It was properly removed. Look, all I'm going to say is you can't make this stuff up. There is a scientific principle. Mary Baker Eddy did discover it. If you want it, God will give it to you. You got to pursue it though. You can't just half-heartedly go after it. You got to give your life up to gain your life. You have to divest yourself of all the things that you fear letting go of in order to give your life to gain your life. But all you're doing is you're doing this instead of this. Don't hold on to things that don't belong to you. Just do this and they'll all be given to you. They'll all be poured seamlessly and effortlessly. And that's the same thing that worked with the tithing. It says, hey, it's not my money, it's not my substance, it's God's stuff. And that's what people like my friend, who maybe he'll be my friend again sometime, I still consider him, you know, God's child, and I just don't want to deal with that personality right now, because he's not personality, and I know the truth about him is that he's God reflecting only God. So the next time we get together, it'll be on a equal playing field. Okay? So what really happened is the temptation for personality to arise showed up in the hologram, in the matrix here, and so I have to pray on that, and I just know that that's not him. That's not the God. That's not the child of God. You know, it's not some calculating, you know, machine that always wants the upper hand and has to show everybody how important it is. God never created that. So I'll just let that disappear, and then he'll show up in my life again as God's child. That's it. And that's how Sabrina and I, fast forward, this is how we fixed our marriage. Is, you know what? You never did me wrong. I never did you wrong. That's the belief in two minds. That's the belief in competition. That's the belief in good and evil. So you take it back to first principle and you build on that foundation and you hold steadfast to it, refusing to waver, refusing to believe the material evidence, and rebuking it for the truth. It's not hard, but it isn't like always instantaneous, because there are still things that you're dealing with and you're still working out, and usually that has to do with that you're holding on to something. So if you're not getting there, you're holding on to something like the belief in heredity, or the belief that, you know, you deserve something other than what God wants to give you, or the fact that he doesn't have the capacity to give you everything that you could possibly desire and more, or some sort of interference that you believe because it's coming from a carnal position of lack of some kind, lack of love. And, you know, full circle, as I'll just wrap it up here, is, Heather, is you go back to where did your broken heart come in? Where did you lose your sense of trust, your complete trust in life? That's where you go back to. And then you see it for what it is and see that it never happened, because God didn't create it that way, because God doesn't make mistakes. So your idea that a mistake was made never happened. And so then you fix your heart from that position, and then you proceed forward, and you don't let yourself venture beyond where your peace leads you. And then you'll stay within the narrow path, the narrow gate that gets you there. All right, that's all for now. Hope you liked it. It's a long rant, I get it, but might be a couple nuggets for you. God bless.